record. I guess now would be the time to start it. Okay, so welcome everyone to our regular monthly technical subcommittee meeting. I know many of us have either their offices closed, working from home, or doing other types of social distancing, which since we're all across the country, this has worked well for us even before the current crisis. But work still needs to get done. So I'm glad you all were able to join us today. Today, this was a topic that Nancy, I think, alerted us to. As for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency does some P2 grant outreach, and I asked for any other states that might have similar grant management to join us and maybe talk about it. We will have Ed Bonita or Boito. There we go. Talk about his state's program as well. But first off, we'll have Carrie talk about Minnesota. And as you see there, solvent and coating emission reduction does funding to different groups, trying to find alternate solvents and coatings to degrease it. Carrie is with the Minnesota Environmental Assistance Specialist and part of the Small Business Grant Program. So I will turn it over to Carrie and let her share whatever information she needs to, and then we'll switch over to Ed and then have any discussions. So Carrie, it's all yours.
I'm not hearing anything.
Yes, me neither. Carrie, let's see, you're on.
So I haven't seen her microphone go hot at all. And so Carrie, you can, okay, she's gonna call in, it says.
All right, she'll call in. So Ed, why don't we go ahead and start with you then?
Okay, do I just click the share button here?
Yes.
Okay. All right, everybody, good afternoon. My name is Ed Boito. I'm the Small Business Ombudsman at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And one of the grant programs that we offer, actually one of the few grant programs that we offer, just specifically tailored for small businesses, is what is called the Small Business Advantage Grant. And what this grant is for is primarily to help small businesses achieve energy efficiency or pollution prevention reductions in their operations. Now this, as you can see there on the screen, this is a 50% matching grant up to a maximum of $7,000 for small businesses to put in any type of energy efficiency or pollution prevention equipment. When we're looking for pollution prevention equipment, we're looking for anything that is going to reduce any type of waste that goes into the waste stream. Just to give you an idea of one of the items, I'm going to scroll down here. We actually do quite a few of the film X-ray to digital X-ray upgrades. And here we had an orthodontic office that implemented digital X-rays, took out all of their film-based X-ray equipment and processing chemicals. And you can see there that they saved a lot of waste that went into the waste stream, saved a lot of clean water and also sewage costs. That grant, they actually got about, this is a little bit older, they got $9,000. Now, one of the things that we do is we give out a maximum of $6,000 for straight up lighting upgrades. So anyone that's going to LED lighting, their maximum grant that they could get would be $6,000. But any other projects that would involve say, a combination of lighting or HVAC or straight HVAC, boilers, digital x-rays. Well, actually not digital x-rays. They can get up to $7,000. I actually have it categorized by the project that they're doing and the amount of money that they can get. I forget, someone had asked me originally, where do we get $1 million every year to give away? We have a fund in Pennsylvania. It's called the Hazardous Sites Cleanup Fund. And that is funded by tipping fees at landfills. So for every ton of waste that is tipped at a landfill, that tipping company, that waste hauling company must pay $1, I think it's $1.25 now, for every ton. And that funds a lot of our brownfield work, a lot of our Superfund sites, our statewide Superfund sites here in Pennsylvania, and we get $1 million that goes towards this grant. Now this is, we don't go by the EPA small business definition of 500 employees. We only use 100 or fewer full-time employees. And there's really just two things that they have to do. They have to save 25% annually on their energy consumption or their pollution prevention related expenses. And they have to save $500 a year minimum. Okay. Now you'll see there, it says down in here, it says natural resource protection projects are exempt, and I can get to that in a minute. So I'm going to come down here and just show you one of our documents here. This is the grant guidance, essentially all the rules for the entire program. And this will pop up in just a second here. So these are our grant guidance. It's our grant guidance document. And if you'd like, please peruse this later. It goes into all the details of how the program works, who's qualified, everything like that. If you have any questions, you can always call me back or email me. I'll be happy to answer them. I just wanted to show you a few things on here. Here, as you can see, different categories that I have. You can see the lighting only category. If they're only doing lighting, they get $6,000 a year. If they're doing a medical equipment upgrade, that would be anything from an intraoral scanner, primarily used by periodontists, to x-rays, they can get $5,000. I'm going to skip over the other two, or the natural resource protection one, for a minute. But anyone that wants to put in a solar thermal hot water system can get up to $2,500. And all other projects, that would be boilers, HVAC, things like that, they can get up to $7,000. Okay. What we did is this 2 years ago, we added what are called natural resource protection projects. And what those are for primarily for our farming community. Anyone that wants to do a project that reduces the amount of nutrient and sediment runoff that gets into our waterways, they can apply for up to $7,000. Now, a couple other minor things about this. This grant only covers equipment only. So let's say, for example, if a company was going to do a $10,000 lighting project, that, let's just say that the labor was $5,000 and the lighting equipment was $5,000. Well, they'd only be able to get 50% of that equipment back. So they'd be essentially have $7,500 out of pocket, $5,000 for the labor and $2,500 for their half of the materials. But then they can also get rebates from our utility companies here to do any type of energy efficiency project. There's often a lot of rebates available, thousands of dollars sometimes for lighting projects. Okay. Yeah, the complete list of rules and how everything works is here. Myself and my assistant, we worked really hard to get this project up and running. Well, actually, I didn't get it up and running, but we put everything electronically. This program's been up and running for 16 years. I've been doing it for the last 4. So it's been very successful. This past year, or actually this current fiscal year, we just closed the program about 2 weeks ago. We had 239 applicants, and out of those 239 applicants, I believe we gave away 219 grants. So there was about 20 applicants that did not get the grant. Many times it was a nonprofit that would apply, and they're not eligible because they have to be a for-profit and registered small business. We've also had quite a few people who, essentially said, oh, I only have 80 employees, but when I do the background checks on them, I find out that we'll have 400. So we don't give them the money and things like that. Most of the time they do meet the 25% minimum on energy efficiency savings and the $500 savings. Okay. So there's all of our rules and regulations. Yeah, nothing for you, no heavy reading for you, just something if you were looking to do this type of project or this type of grant program, it's already here and ready to go. All right, does anyone have any questions? Hello?
Okay, so thanks for that, Ed. Nancy asked, can you give an example of how the funding is matched? So this sort of leads into some of the questions we had for the group as a whole. How do you determine what the matching is? How do you keep tabs on it, and other types of tracking of the funding?
Well, they have to provide to us a quote from a vendor for the equipment that they're purchasing. So for example, if someone provided me a quote for $8,000 worth of equipment, then I give them a grant for $4,000. They have to complete a 1-year post-project report that's due back to us a year after they complete their project. And what we do is we look at their energy bills or other pollution bills, like say wastewater or some of them you can't really judge. The grant is so small, there's not a lot of oversight that we do with it. We do some spot checking to make sure that they have done the project, and we've never encountered a small business who did not do the project. I hope that answers your question, and if you have more, please feel free to ask.
Since you're looking at past utility or whatever to determine energy and or pollution prevention settings, about how far back do you look?
We only ask for their most recent electric bill. And that's, it's going to be close to what they use on the annual basis. If you think about it, it's quite easy to calculate. If someone's taking out say a 400-watt high bay light, and they're putting in a 100-watt LED panel, you know that they're going to be saving 350 watts per year on that light bulb. And if they buy 100 light bulbs, we know exactly how much electricity they're going to be saving over the course of that time.
Right.
A lot of it's easy. Where it gets really weird and you kind of have to go by what they're telling you is when you're replacing boilers, because they'll say, well, our boiler is 28 years old, it's scaled up, it's probably running at 60% efficiency. And we don't actually ask them to do any type of heavy analysis on it. We're kind of taking their word at what they're doing.
Okay. Well, that sort of leads me into my next question. Is like, since you are taking their word, is there any advice on how to be the most efficient or have an overall pollution prevention that they sometimes ask? Like, I know you can't necessarily go in and design or say, go use this, but how much advice do you give them on that end?
Well, I used to be an energy auditor in my past life here, so I'm able to help them out quite a bit with some of the calculations. We also have an organization that is partially funded by our Environmental Protection Agency here. It's called the Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program. And there's actually 5 energy engineers that can go on site anywhere in the state and do an analysis. And if those guys any one of those 5 from the Technical Assistance Program go out and do an analysis, and they come back with pretty hard numbers, I usually take them for what they're telling me, because they are engineers and they're on my side. They're not going to lie for a client and tell me that they're getting more energy efficiency or less pollution reduction than they thought. So I do kind of have a team that goes, they're not my employees, but we as a team together can assist these small businesses in calculating their waste or their energy efficiency. Some of the other projects we've done that are kind of interesting, we do quite a few compressors, we do boilers, HVAC, maple syrup producers. We have a lot of maple syrup producers in our northern tier of our state. And because of the prevalence of natural gas up there, they're able to switch from wood to natural gas, which does help the particulate matter that's being expressed. And also they're purchasing reverse osmosis equipment or evaporators, high efficiency evaporators, so that they don't have to burn as much energy. It actually saves a lot of energy and soot and particulate matter.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. So do you have like a general compilation of the metrics that you collect, and is that like available on your website, or do you also include that in the SB annual report?
I actually have that on my website here. If I can put this away and go back here. On our website here, over on the right, you're going to see these 4 blocks. That's the Advantage Grant. I also have a pollution prevention assistance loan program that's available to small businesses. And that's a fixed 2% loan to a maximum of 100,000. It's very underutilized just because of the low interest rate environment we're in, because it does take a long time to get that through. But if you look at our small business ombudsman publications, we have an annual report that we do every year for our General Assembly and the governor. And once this loads, I can scroll down here quickly and I can show you what we saved in the last year. And this is a multimedia piece. It would be very interesting for you guys to look at also. This is the total project funding from last year. And this is the different project types that were done. We also do, the other thing we do quite a few of is auxiliary power units. Those are also very big for the trucking industry. We have an interactive map that shows exactly where every project was done throughout the state. And here's the metrics that we had for 2017-18. Just through this program, we saved 3.6 million kilowatt hours, 1.8 million cubic feet of natural gas, and everything else that you see there.
Wow. Very impressive.
And that's, again, that's just for that year. So this was our 15th year doing it. So you can take those numbers and multiply them by 15 to see what has been saved over, roughly over the course of the past 15 years.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask is, do you have like a cumulative total? But yeah, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a cumulative total because there was a point for 3 years where we didn't have a small business ombudsman, and this was spread out. This program is spread out to many different programs, and no one kept all that information around, unfortunately, or we could have had a cumulative total.
So Ed, I was curious about the wastewater, 3.8 million gallons essentially, and then also about the perk sludge.
Sure. But I remember this particular situation. The wastewater is very high for that year because we had one very large industrial company, small business, but they were a foundry, and they would use millions of gallons, as you can see, of water, fresh water a year, potable water, and then they would dump that into the whatever was wasted went into the storm sewer, or the municipal storm water, or the municipal sewage water. Excuse me.
Right.
And what they did was they bought recirculating equipment so that they could reuse that water over and over essentially until it evaporated. So there, for that particular one there, they saved a lot of wastewater that was going into the municipal sewage facility.
So it was just used for heat exchange, basically for cooling.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, interesting. Hopefully they did a case study on that.
They had, our technical team went in there and looked at that. I don't remember what exactly was on that report, but that was like a 2-year project that they went into. One thing that we do, so you guys know, is this is like a use it or lose it. Well, first of all, it's a first in, first out. So there's no scoring on this grant. It's like the faster you get your grant in, the faster I review it and approve it. Once the money's gone, it's gone. So it's first come, first serve. And the second thing is they have to use it in our fiscal year. So for example, all the money that I've given away in the past 8 months, they have to do their project by June 30th of this year, or they have to, or they don't get the reimbursement. We have like a proof that paperwork proof that they have to provide. They have to show that they paid the bill. So for example, for the lights, they had to pay for the equipment, and then they show us either a canceled check, a credit card receipt, or a zero balance invoice from the vendor before we would give them a reimbursement.
So I guess since you're working with small businesses, it's a lot easier turnaround. You're not looking at any large, long-term projects. But of course, if they're that long-term, they might not necessarily be a small business.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And you know, this is just the whole idea behind this grant is like a quick hit. Go in and help the small businesses out. Get them to do something with their money, get them off of the schneid, so to speak, to get them to take some type of action. And it works. It works.
Excellent. So any more questions for Ed? Okay, hearing none, let's turn it over to Carrie to talk about her program.
Okay, I'm going to stop share there. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's see if I can share my screen. So I'm Cantarero. I'm with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency in the Business Assistance Unit, and I oversee our small business grants and loans programs. So just a general overview of those programs. They're separate programs. The small business grants programs primarily focuses on air emission reductions, and within that, even more specifically, VOCs. And we do grants throughout the year as funding becomes available. Are you able to see my screen? Sorry, real quick.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So we do different grant programs throughout the year as funding becomes available, and we typically focus those grant programs on very specific projects. We have done more open VOC reduction projects in the past. And then, for example, this year we've done a landscaping equipment project looking for landscaping companies to move to battery operated equipment. And we currently have a solvent and coating emissions reduction grant that is open. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Then we also have our small business environmental improvement loan program. I'll open up, go into that really quick. This is specifically for small businesses. We look at businesses under 100 full-time employees or FTE equivalents or less. And it is currently set at a 0% interest. So it's a really, we've gotten a lot of interest in it lately because of that interest rate that we set. Before it had been a low interest loan, but there was an interest rate that applied. This loan program is not specific only to air emissions projects. We look at all medias. Really the only requirement that we have there is that it needs to meet or exceed an environmental regulation. So we've used this loan in the past for a lot of dry cleaner projects. We've also done some APU for the trucking industry doing an auxiliary power while they're so they're not idling. We're also looking into doing some more targeted marketing with this in the coming years, though, so we can get a wider audience and more variety in the projects that we're doing. So to shift back to our current grant, and the reason I mentioned our loan program is that we are incorporating the loan program and really trying to encourage applicants for this grant program to also consider the loan so that we can package the two together and get some interest with both for a larger project. So with our current solvent and coating emission reduction loan, we're opening it up to any facility that uses solvents or coatings. A lot of our marketing is targeted towards auto body shops or similar facilities. It's a very small loan. We're looking more to do projects that involve product switch outs. The maximum loan is $3,000, and we have about $15,000 set aside for the full grant. Or I'm sorry, maximum grant is $3,000. We have about $15,000 set aside for the full project or for the full grant cycle. So with this one, we are really encouraging our applicants to consider applying for a loan if they have any equipment needs that would go along. I guess I didn't mention our loan program is specifically for capital equipment purchases. So the applicants are able to use that up to $75,000 to get equipment. We do include labor, any delivery fees that may be involved in that, but it is specific to equipment. So with our current project, we're really encouraging people to do those kind of a dual application for a larger project, so we can see some bigger reductions through those. So this is on our webpage. We do have all the information there. We have an RFP up on the page that walks through all the eligibility points. So for this one, we typically open our grants up beyond small businesses. We'll open them up to government entities, schools, educational institutions. And we do open them to nonprofits as well. We've had some smaller technical schools apply for similar projects like this before in their auto body facilities. So we do keep it open to them. And again, this one is we have it about $15,000 available to grant out. With this particular one, we did a 90-day open period because we have found a couple other, or specifically we found one county that has a similar program right now within their county. So we were looking to overlap with them so we could also use that as a marketing tool and to help facilities leverage the amount of money they're able to get for their projects. That's the quick overview of ours. I'm happy to answer any questions or talk more about specifics if anybody has specific questions.
Okay. One of the first questions that's come up, you're talking about you have 15 to maybe 25,000. What's the source of your funding?
Yeah, these are all legislative funds that are granted. We get it every fiscal year. We get an additional money to grant out, and then each year we kind of look at what funding we have available, and then determine what the best programs would be for that year.
Okay. About how many do you have applied for the grants or the loans each year?
Yeah, so these with these auto body kind of focused grants, we typically, and we've done this auto body focus in a few different ways. We've done more general VOC reduction where they would be eligible to apply, and we've done more targeted grants where it is specifically like the solvents and coating emissions reductions. We typically have about 15 to 20 applicants, and we award anywhere from 5 to 10 with these. With other projects that we have, like the landscaping equipment project, we see a lot more interest. We have about around 60 to 70 applicants usually with those. And those are also pretty low dollar amount, like small mini grants.
So you just mentioned you had a landscaping one. Is that mainly to the equipment, or is it looking at uh, s- doing it in a way that would prevent soil or water runoff?
Yeah, so it is specifically to the equipment, and I can open up. I believe we still have the RFP is still on the webpage, even though it's closed. So I can open that up. It's specifically looking at handheld two-cycle equipment and looking to replace that with battery-operated equipment. So yeah, it is still on our website. It's no longer live. It closed last November, and we're working to award those. We're awarding 48 grantees through the landscaping grant program this year.
Was this one a cyclic one, or is this essentially a one-time grant? I noticed you have a lot higher ability on funding for that one.
Yeah, this was the second time that we had done this specific targeted grant program for landscaping equipment. We had gotten some projects in through one of our more open grant rounds previously in the VOC reduction grant round. And we saw through these landscaping grants, they're really low dollar projects, and the VOC reductions were really, really high. So we started doing a more targeted grant program for them. And this is the second one we've done.
Very nice. So similar to one of the questions I asked Ed, is there a tracking of the metrics as to how much pollution you've been preventing using these different grants and loans?
Yeah, so we do track them. We don't have anything on our website as far as tracking, but we do track them internally to see. We do what we estimate the reductions to be, and then we follow up with the grantee afterwards to get a better idea of what their project looked like and get a good idea of the reductions. With the grants, a lot of times we don't require a quote. We do expect them to just get a quote on their own or get their best guess of what the pricing will be. And then we set the grant amount and then a match amount, and they invoice us at the very end of their project. And they can't go over their grant amount, so that's why we're putting it on them to get that number ahead of time. But with that, we really need to follow up with them to make sure the project at the end looked like what the project they proposed was.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you do a dollar for dollar up to your maximum, and based on the percentage that you're giving, is what methods do you have for tracking that, similar to how Ed had theirs, where it's like give us a receipt or some other?
Yeah, so and the match really depends on the grant program. We typically do 50%, but there have been some where we have a 25% match, or maybe even less or more, just depending on the grant and how much we have available to grant out. What we do for these is at the very end of their grant project, because they're primarily equipment, we just typically do one invoice period at the end rather than phase the invoicing throughout the grant project. And we have them send us their paid in full receipt. I have an invoice that they fill out to invoice the PCA, so it kind of outlines what their initial grant was, how much they're requesting, and all the information that we need. And then if there's any additional documentation. So for example, with the landscape equipment, one of the requirements was that their gasoline equipment had to be deemed inoperable in order to get their grant funding. So they could provide pictures showing an engine with a hole drilled in it, or they could have a recycler sign an invoice. So they would have to provide that in order to get their reimbursement as well.
Okay. One thing I noted right at the end of Ed's report was success stories. Would either of you care to talk a little bit about on what information you share about your successes with these different grant projects?
Yeah, I can go first. So we do follow up with our grantees. I have all of them do a final report to let us know how their project went, how their experience was, if there's anything that we can work on as far as the grant process to make it easier for them. We've also really focused on our end on making our applications as simple as possible. So that's one thing that I really try to pull from their grant experience, is how we could make that easier for them. And then we do follow up a little bit more with some grantees that are willing to do a case study or a focus story that we then feature on the PCA website. And then we work with them to let them use that in their own marketing, and we try to promote their projects.
This is Ed. What I try to do too is I use those success stories whenever I open up the new year's worth of grant round. Try to get the word out that, hey, this money's out there. You can make a big difference in your cash flow with your business and save the environment at the same time. And hey, here's 3 or 4 people that made a difference in their business last year. We also try to do some social media marketing with that, and really use it with the legislature and the governor's office too. If I could go back and share something, may I take over the screen, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go back to my page here. If this would help anyone, these were incredible help for our applicants. I heard what you said there in terms of trying to make it as easy as possible for the applicant. I actually have created videos that they can watch on how to do the application. And what I tell people, because a lot of times these grant applicants call me before they apply, and I try to direct them, because I'd like to have a nice clean application come in so I don't have to call them back 6 times. We created these videos that they can watch, and you can see them all listed here on how to do that. And what I ask the people to do is split their screen. They put the video on one side of their screen, and on the other side of the screen, they'll have their the Excel spreadsheet, which is what we call the grant calculator. They can watch for 2 minutes, hit pause, and then do what I've actually showed them to do on the video on their copy, and then go back and forth between the video and their copy. Those have been very successful.
That's definitely excellent there, Ed. I've been looking at doing similar for walking people through doing air permit applications. So I'm sure that they find that very helpful and definitely makes things easier.
Oh yeah, I've gotten a lot. Oh, one of the other things that I did a Survey Monkey. As soon as a grant applicant is approved, probably within a week, I batch it out, but I send out a Survey Monkey to see if how they like the application process. And I've had very high approval ratings from almost all the applicants. You're always going to get 1 or 2, but that's what happens.
Okay.
Here, I'll unshare there.
Okay. So I'll throw this back up for right now, just so I'm not looking at a blank screen. So you've heard from a couple of different people. Are there anybody else out there that wants to talk about their grant management, or any questions for Carrie and Ed?
I just chatted in a question about showing us where, or maybe just even sending the link out as to where you have your case studies located. If it's okay with you, we'd like to make sure to get some of them on our national SBEEP site under our sustainability resources. We have several other case studies. And so we'd like to just take a look at these and see if we could add some of them, either from Pennsylvania or from Minnesota.
Yeah, Nancy, I'll be happy to send you the link to those.
Great. And if you're on technical, if you want to send it out to technical, there's other people who might be interested too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can send you that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly include them into the minutes for this call. So. All right. Since there appears to be nothing much further right now, a couple of general things. As most of you know, there's been a lot of closings, a lot of conferences being canceled or postponed. Our own annual training is coming up fairly soon, maybe. Lisa should be talking with Paula sometime this week, hopefully. And right now, as you saw with the announcement through the SBEAT Maine, proceed forward, but maybe don't necessarily make your travel plans until we know more. But hopefully we'll get some news soon on that. In the meantime, we can go ahead and continue doing our monthly calls because by Zoom, we could follow all the CDC guidelines for social distancing and such. Next month, we have Steve Priest with Madison Chemicals that's going to be talking on aqueous-based cleaning. Currently, we do not have a call scheduled for May because of the annual training. Again, that may change, and we may see about using one of the topics that we were planning to have at the annual training and turning it into a call if by some reason the annual training does not happen in May. So just laying out some contingencies there, as well as discussing what we do know about future topics. So any final questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I appreciate y'all's time, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up and see you next month.
Thank you. Good call.
Thank you very much.